there is this, I don't know, puzzle, at least to me, maybe other people have figured out about Marx and Engels's views on this, because Kusama quotes this famous line from the 1872 or whatever, introduction to the Communist Manifesto, about how the workers can't simply lay hold of the existing machinery of state; they have to smash it. But like right around the same time, you get Marx explicitly saying in like speeches to the International that actually we can, in a certain sense, to quote somebody in the chat who I think was not as optimistic about this. We can, in a certain way, vote our way to socialism. That of course, you're going to run into violent resistance from capitalists, which Eric Blanc also said in his opening. But that like there is this sort of road there that like starts with winning democratic elections within existing institutions in those countries where you have the sort of most democratic capitalist institutions. And it's never, since I realized that Marx said the second thing, and that, and he said it a few other times after that, and Engels said it a bunch of times long after that. It's been really unclear, at least to me, how those two ideas are supposed to fit together. Like what do we actually mean by smashing the machinery of the state and not laying hold of it? That's like sort of consistent with saying that there's a sort of road to socialism through a socialist power party, taking power in parliamentary elections. I mean, I could maybe see how you could make those consistent, but it's like it's just a little bit unclear to me what the thought is.
I can explain, actually. If you read the 1870 to 1876 letters to Liebknecht and Babel, which come up in some of them are published in front of the Critique of the Goethe program, but I've been reading a bunch of them lately. They think that socialists can take the government electorally, but only alone. So they have to reach a true majority, and then they think once they do, it's going to trigger civil war. But their electoral road before that is almost totally abstentionist. And in fact, they threaten to leave the SPD and the proto-SPD and to not work with the German All Workers League, and every third sentence, it feels like we're going to leave if you guys do X. And what it always is giving taxes to a capitalist government, every single time. So they think, yeah, you could seize the government democratically if you actually have a majority, and your only road to taking power beyond that is negative. So you just basically fuck shit up for the capitalist parties, or you'll sit on your hands or even aid on something that'll help workers, such as state institutes workshops or legalization of unions. But even then, you're not supposed to take a position in the government unless you control the government as a majority. So that's their electoral strategy. The problem that I think that leads to, though, Ben, and I think it's a fair problem that no one really has ever reconciled, is how do you go from a party that fucks shit up to a party that actually runs all levels of government democratically? And it doesn't seem to me that Marx and Engels ever truly worked that out, because we also have to remember that Marx and Engels, they're not anti-party, but they Marx barely talks about the party. And in fact, at times he even makes it very clear that the party has to be subsumed to the real movement. Asterisk, I'm not going to tell you what the real movement actually is on asterisk. So there's a lot of ambiguity, and I think you're right, Ben, that even this kind of strategy of opposition that they have, it's them trying to square a circle. And I think this gets really, I think you can kind of see this, for example, in the Engels letters to Kautsky, that Kautsky later publishes, but then takes out all the stuff that Engels put in them about the need for insurrection and counterviolence. And it's also interesting, for example, and maybe we'll get into this when we talk about the difference between the Bolsheviks' position and Kautsky's position, like reading Kautsky's Terror and Socialism, and then Trotsky's response to it, because it's actually kind of surprising how much they agree and where they disagree. It's usually because Kautsky's going, your revolution's premature, you're going to have to rule as a minority, and by ruling as a minority, you're going to have to like do all these terroristic things, which are going to exhaust the general population, and you don't have a choice. And basically Trotsky says, yeah, like we are. But if we don't, we're gonna just walk up from the revolution we just won. And by the way, you guys didn't win yours, so we're kind of sitting alone here. So you know, it's gonna be interesting if that becomes a kind of pretext for this debate.
Yeah, I mean, so okay, I just want to make sure I understand the answer, because that was kind of all about electoral strategy. And by the way, it's probably worth saying as a footnote that it's like, it is interesting to think about how that strategy would be different from, you know, certainly the one implemented by Kshama Sawant in Seattle, that like all those things that she's talking about are, you know, things that, you know, to the extent that she can claim any credit for them, she was doing in like collaboration with liberal Democrats.
But in collaboration from outside within a third party, and not as tailing the Dems or coming through like the DSA, or, you know, a close alliance with Democrats from like a caucus level.
I mean, but okay, just technically speaking,
everybody on the city council is nonpartisan, but like,
it's nonpartisan.
So in that sense, just, you know, I guess you could say that the people that she'd be working with aren't Democrats, but like, you know, I think like, you know, we can leave that language aside and say like, you know, that's one vote right on the city council, and you know, the rest of those people are just regular liberals. So yeah. And I don't know. I don't know if she voted for budgets or whatever. But yeah, okay. So like that was all. That answer was all about electoral strategy, and you know, but it's like, okay, so I mean, I don't think this is what you mean, but I mean, just to kind of draw it out, like I assume that the take isn't that what Marx means is you can't lay hold of the existing machinery until you have an outright majority and can form a government, in which case, yeah, then you'll lay hold of the existing machinery, right? I mean, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I mean, it does seem to, it leads you to a couple of problems, because it seems like the idea is like you're abstentionist until you can form your own government. And then what you do with your government is literally supposed to destroy the state and rebuild it. Like that seems to be what he thinks you're supposed to do. And this is particular when you get all of his arguments. And this I didn't get from letters. This I got from the research of Hal Draper on what Marx means by the dictatorship of the proletariat, where he pulls up all these debates with the Blanquiist and Blanqui about the revolutionary dictatorship of the proletariat is suspending the political rights of the other classes. Now, only as they are those classes, which is interesting. It's not like the descendants of these people are supposed to be shut out. That isn't implied at all. And then like the state, I guess, is supposed to like, see, this is not spelled out. I mean, I'm just going to agree with you, Ben, but it seems like what is implied by this is the state's supposed to like set up these like various cooperative forms of government with the workers, and something like the early Soviet system, like, you know, pre-1921, and administer it that way. But again, that's just implication. Like there's no, it's not, they don't, Marx's whole, like, I don't tell you what the future holds most of the time, except when I do in these letters that I keep private, makes it very hard to know what he actually thinks their strategy is. You always feel like he's kind of hedging his bets.
Couple paragraphs, the critique of the Goethe program, few places. Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. That's fair. I mean, I just, And I haven't read the Draper you're talking about. I've read some Hal Draper, but not that, I think. But I mean, like, it's also, I would imagine very, I mean, like, there's got to be a lot of extrapolation there, because the actual phrase "dictatorship of the proletariat" is used so few places. I mean, this is that. It's
used three times basically.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. So and none of those come with a helpful. Just to be really clear about this, here's what I mean. So okay. Jordan, is there anything else you want to throw in, or you want to keep going?
No, it's just, this is interesting as well, because Varn and I are reading through the critique of the Gotha program, and we started with a very long breakdown of the context of reading the two letters to Babel, and who was the other one? It wasn't to Liebknecht.
It was Broca.
Broca, exactly. The first one, Marx to Broca, and then Engels to Babel. And Engels is a lot more explicit in his with regards to the critique and everything. But he says pretty clearly that you can take, to a certain degree, the bourgeois like rights and privileges within state to take them for granted, and not make that the be all end all, that the socialist goal exceeds and goes beyond that. And I found how interesting it was to learn that that the critique of the Gotha program was so foundational to Lenin for state and revolution. So it'll be interesting to hear those names.
A lot of people's impression of what Marx says there is filtered through what Lenin says in State and Revolution.
Sure, I want to hear more about this from both of them. And it's interesting to hear Kashama bring up, class politics a little bit more. I think Eric was a little bit more blasé about that, and what the working class means within, a place wherein you have universal suffrage, and they can just be potentially represented by socialist leadership. But again, Engels there is kind of like, universal suffrage, great, that's good, if it's not just landholders that are voting, or the nobility or whatever. But that's not enough. What we need is self-policing, self-administration, and in that sense, then the state dissolves. It just becomes an unnecessary category, because the people are for themselves.
You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron-exclusive postgames on Monday nights, all of the patron-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.